From Chicago, Illinois, this is Think Differently, a show that explores people who are challenging the status quo and how they do their work and choose to live their life. From doctors and designers to entrepreneurs and artists, hear the stories, learn the insights, and see what it takes to think differently. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm really excited to talk to you. I've become so aware. I start every episode off like, I'm so excited to talk to you, but I really am excited to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. So let me throw it for folks like this. You're in for a master class in this episode on all things, bringing an idea to life, social media, influencer marketing. Like, this is the guy. Seriously, I can't even believe you're on the show, dude. I feel like
No, dude,
you're usually probably
awesome.
like sharing the stage with like Gary Vee and folks like that. Like, that's your crowd because you're like that dude. But for folks that don't know, I first came across Brendan Gahan's content on LinkedIn. Somebody I know had posted one of your notes there, like a post there, and what drew me in immediately was that you were taking these lessons learned and kind of forecasts for social media marketing, influencer marketing on things like TikTok and Instagram, but you were building really strong business cases for it. Like, people tend to be like, oh, TikTok, it's going to be the next this, get on it. You're like, no. This is why you should get on it. This is what it means for your business. And I was like, man, this guy is sharp. And so I just reached out and started following, and I was like learning a lot. And I was like, I bet you've got a pretty killer story to share, man. So I've learned your story, but thank you for making the time, man. I'm really excited to dig in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really pumped. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah. So, okay. So maybe we can start here, which is like, you built this thing on your own. You had started working, I think your first kind of like introduction to the world of marketing and kind of, influencer and social media marketing. You're working at like a little boutique agency where you were really kind of early to the game of influencer marketing, experiential digital marketing stuff. And from there, you kind of just built that team and things just grew from there, right?
Yeah. So pretty much right out of school, I graduated college 2005, moved up to the Bay Area, and like you said, I got a job at a boutique ad agency, and it was this great kind of moment in time when social media was becoming a thing, and so there was no real formalized department or process for it. And I got hired as a junior account exec. And I just started like throwing out ideas, being like kind of the youngest guy in the office, and a few of them stuck. And in 2006, did an early like YouTube influencer brand deal with Smosh, who's still around, and they're still massive. And it just crushed. Like it literally crashed the client's website, got millions of views, and I was like, this like. I remember having heard how much like billboards cost, and like the first time I heard that, I was like, "This is absurd! Like, why is this so much money?" And then seeing the impact that influencers had, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is the direction I want to go." And so parlayed that into a job at Mekanism. They were doing tons of early kind of viral branded content, stunty digital work, and we kind of just built up like a whole social media influencer marketing department before really knowing what we were doing.
Yeah, it's almost like, was back then, was there the name? Did people name it, like tag it like influencer marketing like it is today?
That's a good question. It definitely wasn't used as often. But I know we were using it. Like, there were all kinds of terms. Like, we would throw out like the term like syndication and like viral marketing. We kind of throw influencers all under that. But yeah, I feel like we called it a bunch of things, but I think most commonly was influencer marketing.
Yeah. There's like that graveyard of industry talk in terms that are like, do you remember when we used to, like call it this? So
Yeah.
The thing that really, I really wanted to dig in with you today is that, a lot of the work that I do is helping people bring their ideas to life. So these are early stage startups, Fortune 500 companies that are just thinking differently about stuff. But to me, the work that I like to think that always resonates is what we call like the human-centered lens, right? Don't think about the product. Think about, what does a product problem does it solve for a person or your service or what have you. In influencer marketing, again, for people that might not, this might not be your jam this week, you don't know this stuff, but influencer marketing essentially is like people with large social followings that have a cause that they can influence people's either purchasing behaviors, their social action, or any other kind of call to action. So it's like this idea of either mass following or very what I'll call intimate following, right? Maybe you don't have millions of followers, but you have got a tribe. You've got an ohana, like Kevin Kelly talks about 1,000 true fans, right? You've got
Yeah.
1,000 people following you, and they're going to buy every album, buy the t-shirt, et cetera. That's what you need. But at any rate, that influencer marketing is leveraging that relationship that people are having online to help brands, services, et cetera, flourish. So I want to dig in today to talk about, like, how is it that we used to live in a world where people would knock on doors and build a relationship, your sales relationship, right? Or you're an account manager, you go visit your account. But nowadays, people buy, people vote, people take action based on the influence of somebody they've never met. So how do we get to the emotion of people? How do we build that connection? How does that happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, the relationship that people form. It's interesting. It's like a friendship that's scalable, and I think what happens is essentially people. I think a big part of it is essentially showing up consistently. You'll notice like all the biggest creators are out there consistently posting content and allowing their fans and their audiences to really get to know them. So it does feel like a long-term like friendship after a while. And I think with influencer marketing in particular, part of the appeal is the fact that a byproduct of that, and just a byproduct of the fact that these are often one-man operations or small teams, is there's so many imperfections that are shared, and I think it's that that imperfection creates a sense of like, this is a little bit more real, and people share themselves sometimes at their worst, and so that cultivates a sense of intimacy, which then breeds trust and a stronger relationship. And I think those two elements really kind of coalesce to create something really, really powerful.
So what I'm like hear you say is that, for people that might be on the hater side, right? To be like, oh, that, yeah, yeah. So they're like, oh, that's just all for fluff. But what you're saying is, no, no, no. The core of the relationship is around authenticity, being genuine, and really like showing vulnerability, right? And when I think about the folks, that I follow online, or the people that I get content from, there's always, you're right, there's always that element of like, hey, it's not always stylized, right? It's like, whether it's a dirty diaper or whether it's like a failed meeting, whatever it is, like being honest with people, to me, that always goes back to the human-centered lens.
Yeah.
I guess one thing that, again, for people that are getting into this, like, Brendan is not like new to the game. He is like the chief social officer at Mekanism. Okay. So this is a dude that he's like global leader. You're on the advisory board for VidCon. You just spoke at Adweek. Like, your agency like is like supremely touted as like top of list, great place to work. Like,
Oh, thank
I
you.
think I was looking at, well, dude, I'm gonna hype you up, because like, it's really, this is like very cool work. I think what's really unique is I always think about people, and I think about how, for a conversation like this, which we're talking about marketing, right? Getting people's ideas to the masses for purchase, for benefit, for a better outcome. That has changed so quickly, like, I used to be a science teacher, right? So like, I'm a nerd on that, but like, in the span of the time the earth has been around, we've only been here for like the last second of the last day of the last hour, right? So even within the last 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, this stuff is changing. It's so dynamic. You had talked earlier about when you had saw the cost of a billboard, and you're like, no, no, like just stop with that. Nobody wants that, right? And so how are you, again, at this high level, how are you keeping up with trends? How are you building trends? Where do you look? Where do you go? I'm just like really curious about how do you stay, forget about staying ahead of the game. How do you stay in the game?
It is so hard now, to be honest. Like, no joke, it is really, really hard. And I think that's part of the reason, like, you referenced my LinkedIn earlier. Like, I made it a goal this year to write and post something once a day. And in large part, it was to kind of push myself to um, really make sure I was staying on top of what was going on. And so, I've always been somebody who is very, I mean, it's at least as far as my ad career has gone, very curious. And like, if somebody's interesting or they're doing something that's like a little bit off or different, I'll usually ping them an email and be like, hey, like, let's meet up. Like, I'm curious what you're doing. And so that's certainly an element of it. I'd also add that, I mean, just like every single day, I have a process where like I will look at, the app store, like what are the rankings, what's happening there. I'll look at, what's trending on YouTube, what's trending on Twitter, and a handful of other sites and resources. And it just kind of, it's interesting, like over time, you kind of identify broad trends, and by like piecing together kind of this weird timeline, and that's really helped a lot. And so like when I kind of see something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, I'll kind of dig in and be like, what's going on behind the curtain here that like I need to know about. Yeah, and then I read a ton about the space. Like I'm always reading, TechCrunch and TubeFilter, and a lot of people in the space on Twitter and stuff.
So let me ask you something. So it sounds like you're really curious by nature. Like you're digging into this daily. You have some places that you go to get content, et cetera. But like, I also know, well, let me ask you this first. So as an example of that, you had posted this thing about David Dobrik, right? Who is this huge YouTube influencer. You wrote this really great piece about him and that he's starting this new app, right? That he's releasing this app, and it wasn't just like, hey, David's releasing an app. You're like, David's releasing an app, but here's why it could actually succeed. And you dug into like, it was everything to me from what I remember. It was like the economics of it. It was the virality of it. Is
Oh
like
yeah.
how he's taking what people loved about him. So I guess, is it fair to say that you do that research daily, you find that thing that like, hey, that's interesting. You learn, and then you're writing like this kind of more thoughtful piece?
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's like I almost feel like these examples, like the Dobrik example, they're almost like entry points into kind of this broader foundational knowledge that I've accrued over the years. Like in working with creators, like I'm just fascinated. Like I've worked with influencers for years now, and I'm always fascinated by the business model that all of them are using. They're always testing new things. And so I have like a deep wealth of knowledge there from the ad side as well as from the creator side. And so like I'm always looking at like, how are they monetizing? And I've got, good amount of knowledge. And so like I'll take kind of different examples and be able to pull from kind of just this, backlog of experience to kind of wrap it up into a broader story, like what you were saying. And so I think it's helped that I've been in the space. I mean, at this point, it's been a long time. And so like influencer marketing, and then on the brand side and just social side, kind of I'm always interested in kind of the different elements that go into building a community. For example, like what are the kind of psychological triggers that really get people to become invested? And when you kind of have those frameworks, you can kind of pick out these examples and tie it back into a broader story. I really enjoy that process.
That is sage stuff, right? When people say like, oh, there's like this wise sage, like a wise sage is like really able to look, because you can't be a wise sage when like you're a young buck, because like you're learning, right? Like this dude Larry, who's become a good buddy of mine. I met him at like an innovation event here in Chicago. He was actually on the podcast, but he's like, hey, there's 3 chapters in your professional career. There's learning, there's proving, and then there's sharing. And so even now, like, what I hear you saying is like, when you see something that piques your interest, instead of like just being like, or like being cynical, you lean into it, and then you're able to bring all this wealth of expertise and knowledge and strategies and monetization and all of this, and be like, this is where I think these things could work here, and why this person is doing that. That to me, like, that's like hashtag sage stuff. That's wise,
Thanks.
you know.
Yeah.
I've got this thing back here again. I'm not putting this on YouTube yet, but you see these little old antique. These are old printer drawers. So back
Oh,
in the
that's
day,
awesome.
yeah, dude, back in the day when people had like hand printing presses, these were the drawers in these big desks where you would say, oh, I need an A. You'd pull out and there'd be like an uppercase A.
Oh,
So
very
anyway,
cool.
I keep like just old random stuff in there. And this is where I go for inspiration. So like I was on a call the other day with somebody, and they were trying to like, they thought that like they had this groundbreaking idea. And I was like, I don't think it's groundbreaking, but I think you're just repurposing something that exists. And so like this is like the first iPod ever, right? This is like
I haven't seen one of those in years.
dude, this is version 1,
Awesome.
man. This is version 1, man. And so I was like, hey, music existed right before the iPod, and you know, listening devices existed before the iPod, but it was a whole new innovation based on the form factor of this. And I said, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? So it's interesting because I'm hearing you say a lot of the same kind of process of like, the stuff that is new is inherently new because it hadn't existed in that form before, but there's lessons from the past that can always be applied to make sense of it.
100%. And like it's very rarely, like, you're not reinventing the wheel with any of this stuff. You know, you can look back at advertising 100 years ago, or just, you know, how people interact offline. The psychology, the kind of triggers, they all carry over. And so this year I've just been, it's interesting. It's like I've kind of identified a lot of patterns, but this year I've been working a lot on like reading about like mental models and frameworks and stuff, and that's really helped like distill it so that you essentially have this way, like this key where, you know, you can look at any platform and you can break down kind of like, well, what's happening here, what is this, what makes this ecosystem kind of work, and what are the triggers that they're implementing to get people to participate or what have you. And I think that really helps me stay on top of things, because it's not like I have to spend quite as much time each time like learning a new platform or understanding why one influencer is working better than another on some new platform and that kind of thing. The other thing I'll add, which I can't remember what it was that made me think of it, is in kind of reaching out to people or platforms or influencers very early on, when I kind of see like different anomalies, it's allowed me to kind of work with a lot of people at the start of their career, or, you know, when a platform was just kind of coming up. And when you do that, it's great because you kind of form a special bond. Like, you know, a bunch of YouTubers and stuff, you know, I was like the first guy that wrote them a check, and like now they're like huge, and like they, you know, it's tough to get their time, but there's you know, I think a sense of I mean, I was able to form a real relationship with them because I connected with them before they were swamped all the time and had millions of fans.
Dude, I just saw a clip yesterday, and it was of Kobe Bryant, and he was, you know, suited up after a game, walking through like kind of the bowels, you know, of the stadium or the Staples Center, whatever. And there was a short, kind of like goofy, nerdy looking like white dude with a microphone, and he's like, Kobe, Kobe, and like Kobe sees him and immediately makes a beeline to him and like hugs him, and it turns out it was his point guard from like his high school team. right? And so those relationships, those early stages, like that
Yeah.
dude's going to be his guy no matter what. And I think you're right, man. I think you said something that was really interesting to me, which was that when you think about how ideas spread, you know, in a marketing sense or branding sense on these social platforms, that you think about the way that they happen in real life. And I think that, you know, selfishly, I'm always the guy at the party, at the meeting. I'm like, oh, hey, Brennan, you got to go meet with this guy. Like, and you're bringing people together. And so for me, that's just always been the thing, is like connect, connect, connect. Because like, you know, I grew up like, I'm a hippie at heart, man. I see the Grateful Dead. Like that's where I grew up. So like, I always want to bring community together, and the online platforms really are really good at that. You find people, you know, that are like-minded and people that are not like-minded, but they can still get value from either content, messaging, etc. The other thing I really wanted to ask you, and I want to dig in a little bit, is that I got to set it up well. So for folks that are not in this space, and you know, maybe you have a social app on your phone, or you know, my mom always refers to Facebook as the first page. She goes, I don't go past the first page, because if I click on anything, I can never get back. So all she does is scroll. That's, if you get on her algorithm and you're on her feed, she'll see it. If not, she'll never click on anything. She just scrolls and likes and scrolls and likes. That's all she'll do. It's the
That's
first page.
amazing.
It's I'm basically the Costanzas from Seinfeld. I don't know if that's relevant to you, if you know what that means, but that
Oh
is
yeah,
my
yeah.
life. So I'm George for sure. At any rate, so these platforms, these social media platforms have become, is all of them have become, if you look at the way Twitter started to what Twitter is now, they are like, they're not even the same thing, right? So these things are growing at an exponential rate. They're changing, you know, sometimes by design, sometimes by user, you know, kind of feedback, or the way the users are interacting with the platform, they change. But my question here is that, like a thing like TikTok, right? Because I know you've been posting a bunch about TikTok. You know, it's right now, it's somewhat early stages, I guess you could still call it, for some folks. But a platform, and the way that it works on the data side, the algorithm, the just the whole back end processes, and then the way that people are actually using it, things like whether it's giveaways or how things go viral or sharing the music or yada yada yada, there's so much there to dig into, that like, I always explain it like being in the airplane, right? So when you're on the ground, you're at the ground level, you can see all the detail, you can see the baggages going in and the tarmac. Get to 10,000 feet, you see the airport and a few little roads around. 20,000 feet, you can see the city. And 30,000 feet, you don't even see people anymore. And so do you have a preference on where you like to be in terms of researching a platform or investigating or working? Do you like to stay at the highest level of, say, TikTok and say, what are some things that we can do to help people? Or are you like super zoomed in on like the micro level?
Yeah, I usually throttle back and forth between the two. Like oftentimes when I'm starting out, like I'll go really deep, and so that I can understand kind of the functionality, and like you inevitably pick up on like little nuances and kind of the ways that a community interacts, which, you know, maybe the first time you post or the first time you're really kind of participating somehow, you're totally oblivious to. And so like I like to know at least, I generally like to know enough to be dangerous. I would not say I'm like an expert on any one platform from a like, you know, knowing every single feature and like how it works, but I like to know at least kind of like how to orient myself and understand like what's actually possible here, because especially in advertising, like I'm constantly working with brands and creatives, and you're trying to ground people in the kind of the framework of the platform and define kind of what the constraints are. I think constraints are a good thing, but if you don't know what they are, you churn and you spend so much time thinking about things that are, wouldn't even work or don't really make sense because of the nuances of the platform. So I usually initially kind of go really deep, and then depending on how sticky the app is, I'll just stick around or kind of just dip in and out of it.
That's it. So I always say constraint is an accelerator of innovation. So anytime that you have
I
your
like
time,
that.
your money, your resources, or a feature set is limited, that's the accelerator for you. And so I love to hear the way you think about that. The other thing is that I had mentioned before we jumped on, like I saw like this crazy picture of you that I thought was fake online, which was you had gone through this phase of like just intense weightlifting and big calorie diets, and you put on like 30 pounds of muscle, and then you're like, I don't think I want to do that anymore. And so that's interesting. But then I also heard you say earlier, like, oh, you go to surf. And so when I hear those things, is kind of like a human centered designer, I think, oh, this is not everybody does those two things. Surfing in and of itself is is so unique of an activity, of a lifestyle, of a mindset. And then the experimentation on the weightlifting, the calorie, whatever, all of that, that's really unique to me. So I got to dig in there. Is there other stuff that you do? Like, is that part of your personality? Does the curiosity of your work, of learning these platforms, spill into other areas of your life?
Yeah, in all of them. I would say since I was probably, I don't know, 10 or 11, I've always been like really focused. I'll have like a goal, and I'll just like be relentless going for it. And like I remember actually surfing, like uh yeah, I think I was like, I grew up in Southern California. Surfing was like the coolest thing in the world to me. And I was not a cool kid. So I was like, maybe if I like can surf, like I'll be cool and like I'll get girls, all those things. And I think it was like the summer between my 7th and 8th grade, something like that. I like made it a goal. I was like, I'm gonna go to the beach every single day and surf. And it doesn't matter. Like, I'm just like gonna do it. And like by the end of the summer, like I'll be decent, or I'll be wherever I'll be. Hopefully I'll be decent. And so I'll always kind of set goals like that. And whenever I don't have them, I like legitimately get depressed. Like I need some sort of challenge to kind of motivate me. And I like picking something that like usually it's like maybe I'm like beating myself up about it, and I kind of use that as fuel to like drive me. It's like it's kind of warped, but yeah, I definitely apply that to a lot of different aspects of my life. It can be a good thing and a bad thing.
Brother, you're talking to the warp mind expert here, man. Like everything you, first off, what you just said is so I was my best friend Colin moved from Chicago to Truckee, California. I don't know, like 12 years ago or something. He was the first guy I know that read the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and he actually did it, right? So he worked for a company that was in Chicago, and he's like, "Hey, CEO, like I could probably work from home, right? Like you don't need me here." And then like after a few months at home, he's like, "Hey, I could just move to the mountains, right? And you just fly me where." So he did it. But anyway,
That's
I was out
awesome.
there visiting, and he gave me a hat. And this hat became like a trademark for my family. We shared this hat. I'd wear it. My daughter would wear it. Everybody would wear it. And it's this company called Big Truck. And they're a small lifestyle brand based out of Truckee, California. And so I interviewed the CEO and founder on the podcast, and he had the exact same story that you did. He's like, when I was a kid, I wasn't like the cool kid. I lived in this area, like I was like working class and everybody else wasn't. He goes, I would mow lawns. He mows Steve Wynn, the casino guy. This guy
Yeah,
used to
yeah,
mow his lawn. But
that's
he said, he goes,
awesome.
he's like, everyone was skating and I was scared and I was like nerdy. I didn't know what to do. So he's like, I was like, I have to skate. I have to figure it out. And it's like the other part you said, which resonates, I think, for everyone that's been on this podcast, is the stuff that goes on up here in our mind that nobody else is aware of is both kind of our greatest asset and our biggest enemy, right?
Yeah,
Because I identify with what you said about when there is not something exciting, meaning like something to learn or a project or a goal, when it's just like business, I'm done, dude. It's not fun. I'm not a good guy to be around by then.
yeah, I can relate. It's really weird. It's like I get listless and like depressed, and like I'm like I just need like something that's really challenging. And it's like it's like I just like if I work on this an hour a day, like chip away at it, like eventually I'll get there. And then it's interesting when you kind of arrive. That's almost like the boring part. You're like,
Dude,
Okay. And like, now what do I do?
dude, dude, that logic to me, I found has applied to so many. I give that advice. The advice is basically the journey is the adventure. The
Yeah.
goal is like, the goal is the artificial thing that you've put there. Cause once you get there, you're never like, everything's great. And here's
Yeah.
an example, a buddy of mine having trouble, at home. And I was like, hey, brother, you're never going to sit down at life and be like, wow, we have the greatest marriage ever. It just doesn't happen. But the work, you carrying the load while she's struggling and vice versa, the journey is where it's at.
Yeah.
So yeah, that logic just applies everywhere. Business, life, relationships, health, wellness, it's everywhere. It's doing the work. That's all it really takes, man.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it's fun. It's fun when you pick the right thing, at least.
Well, there's the right thing too, and then there's the right people. And so something I did want to ask you about is, for work, I get to talk to a lot of C-level folks, but you're a different breed of C-level, right? And so you've run teams. You're the chief social officer in one of the world's like most gnarly, awesome,
Thank you.
accomplished agencies. What is it like to lead teams like that? Because again, you've said you like to experiment, but not everybody does. You kind of dig in on stuff, but some people just like say, give me the marching orders and I'll do it. Other people like to be in on that creation. So, managing personalities, managing teams, what does that look like for you, man?
I'm always trying to figure that out, to be honest. I would say, like, I'm not, I think my management style is like, I like to work alongside people. I'm not, I do not like being like a air quotes boss. In any, I like much more enjoy being a part of the process. And so, for better or worse, I would say generally how I operate, it's like I'll go really deep on a handful of projects and be pretty removed from others. And so it's like I'll kind of like identify things that maybe I'm really passionate about or need, the team needs an extra hand, and I'll like go and do the grunt work. And I think some of that's good. I think the part that's good is I think people feel like, or at least I hope they feel like, I'm willing to kind of be a team player and kind of have that all hands on deck attitude. I'm not above anything, but it's not always the most efficient thing. And I think what I'm not the best at is kind of um, like like delegating and like mapping things out on more of like a longer term horizon. So I'm trying to work on that and get better about like basically almost like before things get to me, have systems in place where it's like other people who are a little bit more oriented towards kind of like process and thinking
Mm-hmm.
about timelines and stuff, get ahead of it on my
So,
behalf.
so you had mentioned like that you like to read. So like right now, like I have this, I guess that's weird. I'm like, no, I have these old antique drawers here. I have an old like wooden crate that I keep like my go-to books, the ones I always recommend. And as I hear you talking, I'm like, oh, well, some of that's in this book. Oh, but this one, I had to pick it up. This right here will save your life.
I
When
think I
as
read that. I got to go back. I'm
dude,
almost positive. Yeah.
dude, the EOS is like, it's the best for management, for helping businesses operate, like, because I think it kind of is where we started, the idea of like the art and the science, right? So the influencer marketing, digital marketing in general, it cannot, well, maybe I shouldn't say it can't. I don't think it traditionally happens in a vacuum without creativity. And creativity, if you read like Stephen Pressfield's like the War of Art, talks about like, if you are a creative, it's not just like, I feel like painting today, I'm gonna paint. It's like, no, dude, that's your fucking job. Do
Yeah.
your job. Like, be a professional and do the craft. And so the creativity part of it, we all are kind of aware of things that will allow us to enhance our work, right? So whether it's music or a cup of coffee or a place you go, a person you're with, a hat you wear, whatever. But then there's, again, that science part of it is like, how do we make that stuff work? And so managing creatives and then managing creative work and then delegating creative work, bro, you need to have some super soft mittens on for that, because like, we take our ideas really, really seriously, man.
Very much so. Yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah, big time.
So what are you most excited about right now? Again, I mean, you are the guy that's on the forefront of all things digital marketing, influencer marketing, and traditionally those things are going to be seen more so in a social platform, right? Like Super Bowl ads, if there is a Super Bowl, I don't know, like I'm sure they still exist, right? And billboards, they still exist. And I still get Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine every month here, but like, what are you excited about? What are things either you're seeing or stuff you're digging into now?
Yeah, I think on the platform side of things, it's really exciting time. It's a really exciting time right now, in that you referenced TikTok earlier. Um, in my mind, there was an era like maybe 2 years ago where, and maybe for a couple of years before that, where it was kind of getting so. I think social was getting a little bit stagnant, and like it was, Facebook, Google duopoly, from like Facebook owning, obviously Facebook and Instagram, and then Google owning YouTube, and there was Twitter and stuff, but there just wasn't as much kind of real traction on other platforms. And I think TikTok really blowing up the way that they have, and also doing well, overall doing a great job with press. They've become a contender in a way that is really disrupting the space, and it's making, it's forcing changes on both of those platforms. You're seeing like, Instagram roll out Reels, YouTube is launching, and they already launched Shorts in India, but they're going to be launching it here in the US. And as a result, you see a new crop of creators, you see a new set of challenges, and new communities emerge. And like that is, I think those are the type of things that get me really excited. And beyond just TikTok, there's this whole ecosystem around like vertical short form video that's emerged. There's Clash, there's Triller, there's Likey, and a lot of them have really sizable communities. I mean, they're not at the scale of like a TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, but millions of people are on there and they're active. And that's challenging because you're trying to kind of figure out how to prioritize these different spaces. But that's also where the opportunity is, because right now it's like, I would say tactics and strategy on Facebook, Instagram, that's largely been commoditized to a certain extent. I mean, and
Yeah.
you're not going to get like a bunch of earned media anymore. But these other platforms, it's like a wide open space, and it's a blank canvas for you to kind of reinterpret. So that's one area that I'm really excited about. And then the influencer ecosystem is in general like the other aspect of it. And I think for a long time, brands really undervalued influencers, and I would still say they do, but I think influencers are kind of forcing the hands of brands, in the sense that they're building up their own massive brands. And when they are working with brands, oftentimes, at least the big ones, are actually working to co-develop products, or a line of products, and like, so they've got their own sub brand. And so they're almost being treated in the same way as like an athlete endorsement when they're working with brands, but then they're also not nearly as reliant upon brands. So like brands are kind of don't have as much leverage on the negotiating table, so they have to make it worthwhile. And that makes it really interesting, because I think those deep partnerships, that is 100% the future of influencer marketing. Doing something where you've got an influencer that you're co-developing products with, you've got them in TV, out of home, obviously all digital. You're running their content as paid ads across social. And when you do that, it just performs so much better because you've got the credibility, like the brand is a real partner. It's not like they're just dipping in and out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really establishes the credibility of both the creator and the brand and helps the two of them grow together.
Yeah. When I hear you say all of that, the thing that pops in my mind is it has never been a better time to be a creative than it is right now in 2020. You know,
100%.
we used to be like the, whatever, like the skate nerds or the art nerds in the back, getting picked on. And now we're leading the charge. We'll be able to set the terms we're set the terms, right? We're sitting at the table with the brands and able to say, I don't think that model works for me. Sorry. I think here's what I think. It's funny. I think and we'll kind of start to close it out, but like one thing, when I think of people that say like influencer marketing, like, it's like, you're wrong. You need to focus on it. But to me, I have this image where 2 weekends ago, my son, all he wanted was to go to McDonald's to get the Travis Scott meal and order it.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to film it for his TikTok. And we went and we were with my dad, right? So it's like Mr. Costanza, right? My dad driving his Cadillac. I'm sitting shotgun. My son's in the back. And my dad's like, yeah, pull up. And my dad is like dying. And, my dad, I'm like, there's this moment where my son is buying the Travis Scott meal at McDonald's. My dad thinks it's the funniest thing ever. I'm videotaping the whole thing, putting it on my Instagram. And I'm like, so if that exists in one little car in Chicago, Illinois, the extrapolation and just the exponential reach of that is validation that this is not just a one-shot wonder. This stuff is here. It has been. It's valid, and it's going to be really. I don't even know if it's disruptive anymore. I think it's going to be status quo, right? Like you said.
Yeah, 100%. And, I have these conversations too with people where they're like, influencer marketing, when's it going to be over? And I don't understand that. It's not going away. It's just growing. And even if you don't personally enjoy it, you don't have to understand how effective it is, because like it just, a great influencer program, almost by any metric under the sun, at least as far as I've experienced, will crush like any kind of more traditional
Mm-hmm.
approach to a campaign.
Yeah, and not when I was a kid, it was like Michael Jordan, right? It was like the skateboarders that I liked. It was the musicians, right? Well, not everybody's going to the NBA, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody nowadays has a phone and they got TikTok. So everybody, to my mind, what I love, like I said, it's a great time to be a creative. The platform is level, like the playing ground is even now. Whether you're a small town kid from Iowa City, Iowa, or you're growing up in Manhattan, or you're in the Bay, the playing field's even, man. So people that are out there, if you're listening, when you're listening, just start putting the content out there. Believe in it because it is here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, man, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's like a cool conversation. Like,
Thank
definitely
you.
lived up to my expectation.
Oh, good.
I do end each episode by asking the guest to fill in the blank. So I'm going to ask you to play along here. So Brendan Gahan thinks differently about.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and like I'm kind of I'm kind of merging two ideas, but I would say brands and the creator economy, because I think the two are kind of coalescing and they're becoming one and the same. I firmly believe that that influencers will be building massive brands that are going to be rivaling the biggest fashion, soda, whatever insert category. And I think they're going to be dominating them if they aren't partnering with existing ones. I think if you don't partner with creators, it's just a matter of time before they'll overtake you. And I think the reason for that is they've got the marketing built in, and it's not just they have a big audience. It's much, much deeper than that. It's it goes back to what we were talking about, like the relationship that the viewers have. It's a scalable friendship, and you are going to buy from your friend. So I think Yeah, the intersection of brands and creators.
Very cool, man. Well, thank you again. Is there anything, and a lot of different people listen to this, anything that you need help with right now that our listeners can jump in on? Any challenges you got going on? Anything you need help with?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, if anybody is interested in the space, I geek out on it. So if anybody wants to talk, hit me up.
Got it. And where should people go? What's the best way? Again, I love your LinkedIn stuff. Like I look forward to that post every day. I think you and I got, oh yeah, that was you, dude. I got tagged in, so this woman, Cheryl Barbary from FCB, who I'd done some work with, she tagged like us in a post like, hey, I would love to hear like, here, I tagged some people and I really want their feedback. And I was like, I got tagged in a post with Brandon. Holy shit, this is awesome. And I sent her a message. I was like, dude, you just made my life here, man. It's super cool to be considered in this group with you. So should people go on LinkedIn? Where's the best way for them to like get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me anywhere online, just Brendan Gahan, BrendanGahan. I have a website. If you guys want to sign up for my email list, I will be restarting my newsletter soon. And I've got actually like a bunch of long form posts that I've kind of been banking. So I've got some really interesting stuff in store, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, whatever your platform of choice is, I'm there.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, man, I want to thank you again. This was a super cool dive into your world. You're smiling. I can see you through Skype smiling. So that is always a good thing. So thank you so much for your time, man. I hope you continue to be safe, well, successful, creative, strategic, again, merging the soul and the science of marketing and influencer marketing. Brendan Gahan, man, leading the masterclass. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Awesome.